Today we're going to be installing the Cox Stunt Parts Pro Series cage on the F4i. When installing the crash cages on your bike, it's a good idea to throw a jack under and lift it up just a little bit so the weight's off your bolts. Essentially, you should be able to hand tight these motor mount bolts in just like that. That tells you that the weight is not just resting on the bolts as you try and tighten them. It's similar to when we did the saggy ass fix and the bolts just pulled right out without any resistance. That's what you're looking for. You also want to make sure your adjusting collars on the motor are also fitted correctly, the castle nuts. There's one in the rear here, and then there's a center one on the right side, and essentially those just push onto the motor and kind of hold it in place. Even with the castle nuts tight, if you don't have a jack and you for some reason take out all the motor mount bolts, the motor will probably shift a little bit, so that's why the jack's a good idea to have there. This is the hardware package that comes with the Cox cage. You have your 4 pucks. You will have 3 long bolts and 1 short bolt. 2 of the long bolts go to the front motor mounts. The 3rd long bolt goes to the right side center motor mount. And the 4th bolt, which is the short one, goes on the left side center motor mount. And then you also have the all thread that goes to the rear motor mount bolt. You pull the OEM bolt out and slide this one through, and it replaces that one. Another thing you want to do is add some HT Moto or some rubber type material to this back portion of the cage, because this mounts to your frame like that, and instead of having metal on metal, this little piece of rubber, HT Moto or whatever, will prevent the frame from getting scratched up, especially if you spend a lot of money on powder coat. I spent a lot of time last night kind of struggling to find good fitment. I took the provided spacer and then added a smaller spacer that comes with the SS Moto spacer pack. And as you can see, this is not the provided spacer Cox gives you. There are also spacers from the SS Moto spacer pack. This is the OEM motor mount spacer. 2 of those are just ever so slightly smaller than the spacer Cox provides you, and that gives me some pretty flush fitment. This isn't angled like it was in the picture. For spacers on the left side for the center motor mount, this is what we're working with. I've got the provided spacer, and then 2 of the semi-thick ones that come in the SS Moto spacer pack. And then up front, between the cage and the frame, I've got a thin, the semi-thick, and then a thick spacer that comes in the SS Moto spacer pack. And then you have your OEM spacer between the frame and the motor itself. And then just because the threads aren't long enough on the back, I've got another washer back there past the motor where the nut butts up against this. I don't know if you saw how easy that came out. That's because I jacked the motor up a little bit. That's kind of how you want the bolts to come out when you're replacing them, taking them in and out. That means you have the perfect jack height and a lot of the stress is off the actual bolts. Here's the all thread that comes with. Goes right through. When you're doing the all thread, don't forget about those motor mount spacers that are there on the left side, and then the one on the right side right there. In terms of routing your radiator hose and your clutch cable on the right side, I went through this portion of the cage. This hose really isn't getting pinched much. It's just kind of sitting in between there, and the clutch cable is fine like that. I put blue Loctite on the center motor mount bolt, and then right where the nut's gonna sit on the front motor mount bolt. And then for torque specs, I'm sticking with whatever the service manual says, which is 29 foot-pounds for the center, front, and I just did the same thing for the rear. Pucks are super easy to install. You just slide them in. Your hardware package has these set screws, and there's the threaded holes on the underneath, and you just snug these up into the pucks, and then the pucks aren't going to go anywhere. That's how you install the Cox Pro Series cage on the F4i.
Hottest stash in the carpet. Yeah, we trapping out apartments. I ain't done when you start shit.